The sky cracked with fire as two worlds collided above the city of Krita. Once a place of beauty and harmony, the capital of the Arvan Empire now shook with screams and falling towers. Above the royal balcony, warships circled like vultures, spewing beams of destruction into the heart of the palace walls. Soldiers scrambled below, their formations broken, their orders drowned by chaos. In the center of it all stood Princess Liari, daughter of the High Empress, her skin glowing green. Under the flaming sky, her white ceremonial dress was stained red, not with her blood, but with that of the guards who had just died shielding her. Her breath was heavy, her fists clenched. She had been trained in diplomacy, not battle. She was never meant to witness war from this close. She turned sharply when the blast doors behind her crashed open. A single human soldier out of place, wounded, helmet missing, stood there. His breathing was rough, his uniform scorched, but his eyes were locked onto her. She had seen him before. He was part of the Terran envoy, a nobody, a translator. His name was Jace. "Get down," he shouted, voice raw and hoarse. A second later, something burst from above, sending shards of glass like knives into the room. Without thinking, he rushed forward and threw his body over hers, arms out, back exposed to the blast. When Liari opened her eyes, her vision spun with dust and fire. She felt something heavy on her, something warm, the human he had shielded her from the explosion. His back was torn and bleeding. He didn't move. She screamed his name, even though she had only spoken to him once before. Jace groaned, barely conscious. "Still alive," he muttered. His blood pooled beneath her arms. His voice was fading. "You're safe." "That's enough," Liari stared at him. Her mind swirled with questions. Why had he done this? Why would a human throw himself into death to protect a princess not even of his species? She was royalty, yes, but not his. And yet, here he was, slowly dying for her. Outside, another tremor shook the walls. More invaders were coming. Her guards were dead. Her escape pod was gone. She had no allies left inside the palace. Except one. With great effort, she pulled Jace up, dragging him through the corridor. He groaned in pain but didn't resist. Blood ran down her arm. She didn't care. All she could hear was the echo of her mother's command. Leave the weak behind. Protect only the bloodline. Liari spat those words from her mind. The halls that once held royal dances were now smeared with soot and ash. Statues of ancestors lay broken, and the sacred banners burned in silence. Jace coughed blood again. She tore part of her gown to press it against his wound. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why protect me?" Jace gave a half smile. "Because you looked scared. And I thought no one should die scared." She blinked, and for the first time since the bombing started, tears slid down her cheeks. Not for the soldiers, not even for her empire, but for this one human who decided her life was worth saving. The escape chamber was locked, powered only by royal DNA. She placed her palm on the panel, and it hissed open. She dragged Jace inside and closed the hatch. Her fingers trembled as she activated the medical stasis pod and shoved him inside. It sealed with a cold hiss. Alarms roared again. The enemy was at the final gate. Liari looked at the throne room's direction. It was the last place she was meant to defend. But she turned her back to it. Her empire would fall. Her crown would be lost. But he had not let her die. She sat beside his stasis pod, whispering promises he couldn't hear. That if he lived, she would never return to her throne. That she would go where he went. That her heart now belonged to the one who bled for her. The escape ship launched in silence, leaving the palace to burn behind her. Fire swallowed the towers. Screams vanished into smoke. But inside that tiny vessel, wrapped in darkness and steel, a human and an alien princess floated together toward the unknown. Only one of them was awake. But both had already made their choice. Asterisk floated silently through the void, guided only by pre-programmed coordinates. Inside, the hum of life support was the only sound. Princess Liari sat beside the medical pod, her eyes never leaving the human inside. His breathing was shallow, but stable. The pod's systems were keeping him alive barely, she didn't know where they were going. Only that the coordinates had been set by her father long ago, for emergencies. A place beyond the Empire's reach. A place her enemies wouldn't look. It was a chance, not a plan. But that chance had to be enough. Her royal gown was torn and dark with dried blood. Her hair stuck to her face. She hadn't slept. She hadn't spoken. She only watched Jace, a human. A Terran. A stranger who gave her a reason to live when her entire empire turned to ash. Hours passed. Then days. Food was rationed. Water was recycled. She ate little, drank less. She wanted to be awake when he opened his eyes. If he ever did. She pressed her palm against the glass of the stasis pod and whispered, "You promised I was safe. But now you're the one who's not." The ship jolted without warning. Liari stumbled forward. The control panel blinked red. An asteroid field. The auto-nav was trying to dodge, but the ship was old, rusted, and her pilot was unconscious in a medical pod. She strapped herself into the chair and took manual control. Her hands shook. She had trained in royal sciences, not flight. Still, she gritted her teeth and pushed the thrusters. The ship ducked left, then right. Alarms screamed again as a rock grazed the left engine. Sparks flew across the panel. "Come on," she muttered. "You protected me. Let me protect you now." She flew blind through the rocks, her heart hammering. Her eyes darted between the screen and the viewport. One wrong move and they would both die, and no one would ever know what they meant to each other. No one would even care. The ship cleared the last asteroid and burst into open space again. She collapsed back into the seat, gasping for air. The silence returned, cold and still. She looked at Jace again and smiled faintly. "I did it," she said. "But you owe me for that one." Finally, after what felt like weeks, the ship slowed. Near a small green moon, the surface glowed faintly. The scanner read, "Oxygen-rich, safe temperature, 0 life signs." A hidden sanctuary left by her ancestors. It was real. She landed the ship on a soft clearing and opened the hatch. The air was cool, clean. Birds were heard in the distance. Strange trees grew in clusters of violet and gold. The sun was gentle, casting long shadows on the ground. Liari stepped out, her feet touching real soil again. She turned back and began dragging the stasis pod down the ramp. It took nearly an hour to find shelter, an old stone temple built into the side of a hill. Abandoned, but safe. She powered up a small generator and activated the medical systems. Jace's pod hissed as the healing sequence reached its final phase. His eyes fluttered. His chest rose stronger. He blinked once. Twice, his lips moved. "Where are we?" She knelt beside him and smiled, alive and hidden. "That's all that matters." Jace sat up slowly, wincing as the pain returned. But he was awake, breathing, speaking. She reached out and touched his shoulder. Warm, real, alive. Her heart beat faster. "And not from fear. You saved me," she said. "Now I've returned the favor." Jace gave a small laugh, then winced. "I don't remember much. Just pain. And then your face." She looked away for a moment. "You jumped in front of me. Took the hit, and then everything burned. I left the palace. I left my people. I left the crown." Jace stared at her. "You gave up your throne?" She nodded. "For a human who made me feel more safe than my own guards. For someone who didn't see me as a title. Just as a person." Jace leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. "Then I guess we're both fugitives now." She smiled again, this time softer. Not fugitives. Survivors. Together. The temple walls were thick and ancient. Moss grew along the cracks, and the air inside was cool and quiet. It became their home. Not because it was perfect, but because it was the only place left where they both could breathe without fear. Jace healed slowly. His wounds closed, but the pain still lingered in his bones. The medical unit did its best, but his recovery depended more on time than technology. Every day he woke to find Liari sitting nearby, watching over him. She brought him food local. Fruits, roots boiled in water, sometimes small creatures that resembled birds. She didn't speak much while he ate. She only watched and waited, as if making sure each bite helped him stay alive. One morning, as the mist rose from the grass outside, Jace tried to stand. His legs shook. His breath caught. Liari rushed to help him, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. He leaned on her, his weight pressing down. She didn't flinch. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice weak but serious. "I do," she replied. "Because you already did." Each day they walked a little farther. From the edge of the temple steps to the nearby trees. Then down a path that led to a small pond. Birds circled above, singing strange, beautiful songs. Jace often sat on a flat rock and stared at the water. His reflection looked like someone else, someone who had died and returned. "I never asked," he said one evening. "What happens if your people find us?" Liari looked at the setting sun. "They won't. This place is not on any modern map. It was erased from history long ago. Only my bloodline knew it existed. And if they do?" She turned to him, her green eyes steady. "Then they'll have to go through me." There was silence after that. A silence full of meaning. The kind that didn't need words to be understood. In that quiet, they learned each other's rhythms. Jace began to laugh again. Liari began to hum when she cooked. The fear still existed, but it became smaller each day. One night, thunder rolled across the sky. A storm was coming. Jace stood at the entrance of the temple, watching the clouds. "Feels like something's changing," he said. Liari joined him, wrapping a cloth around her shoulders. "It's the season shift. Storms bring life here, but also danger." That night, as the rain poured down, a strange hum filled the air. Jace sat up from his bedroll, eyes alert. Liari was already standing, holding a pulse spear in her hands. The humming grew louder. Then a flash of light struck the ground outside the temple. A drone, small, silver, marked with the royal crest of the Arvan Empire. It hovered silently, scanning the ruins. Then it turned toward them and projected a blue light. A voice followed, cold, robotic. "Princess Liari, you are ordered to return. Your absence is considered treason. Your blood belongs to the crown." Jay stepped in front of her, weak but standing tall. "She doesn't belong to anyone." The drone buzzed, calculating. Threat detected. "Stand down, Terran." Liari raised the spear. "He is under my protection. Leave now, or be destroyed." The drone hesitated, then fired a warning beam at Jace's feet. The ground sparked. Liari didn't wait. She lunged forward and drove the spear through the drone's core. It sparked, twisted, and fell silent in the dirt. Smoke curled from the broken machine. The storm still raged above, but inside the temple, something colder had arrived. They had been found. Jace slumped against the wall. "They're coming, aren't they?" Liari didn't speak. She walked to the shattered drone, pulled its memory chip, and crushed it beneath her boot. She turned back to Jace. "We don't run. Not anymore. I left the Empire for you. I won't let them take you." The storm howled louder outside. Lightning painted the hills with fire. Liari stood tall, her silhouette glowing against the crackling sky. And Jace, wounded but not broken, rose beside her once more. Together, they prepared to fight again. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting what they had built with blood, pain, and choice. Asterisk, the storm passed, but the tension did not. By morning, the temple felt colder than ever. The destroyed drone remained at the edge of the clearing, half covered in mud. Birds no longer sang. Even the wind moved quieter between the trees. Jace sat on a stone step, sharpening a crude spear he had made the night before. His body still ached, but his mind had shifted. He was no longer a translator. No longer a guest. He was a defender now. He was hers. Liari paced near the entrance. Her fingers tapped the hilt of the blade she carried. She hadn't slept. Her eyes stayed locked on the horizon, waiting for any sign of movement. Her empire had spoken. It would not be the last time. They won't stop, Jace said, not looking. Up, will they? No, she answered. They will send more. First machines, then soldiers, then my family. Jace glanced at her. Then we prepare. Together. The word together hung in the air like a vow. A promise stronger than blood. Liari knelt beside him and began helping sharpen the second spear. For the first time since fleeing her home, she didn't feel like a fallen royal. She felt like a warrior. They spent the next 3 days fortifying the temple. They blocked the lower paths with stones. Set traps among the trees. Wired alerts near the clearing. Jace taught Liari human techniques from Earth survival manuals stored in the escape ship. Liari, in turn, showed him how to move through alien terrain without leaving tracks. Each night, they slept back to back under the high arch of the old ceiling. Each day, they trained until their muscles burned. It was not just for defense, it was for discipline, for focus, for something to believe in. On the fourth night, just after sunset, the alarm wires snapped. Jace jumped to his feet. Liari was already moving. They grabbed their weapons and crept through the shadows toward the trees. The wind carried a new scent: cold metal and engine oil. They weren't alone. In the clearing stood 3 armored figures. Arvan elites, black and gold armor. Eyes glowing red behind narrow helmets. One of them stepped forward and removed her mask. Her skin was like Liari's, but older, sharper. Her mother, Liari, the Empress said, "You've led us far enough. Come home." Liari stepped from the shadows, weapon raised. "You came to capture me, not to speak." "No," the Empress said. "I came to remind you of your duty. You are royal. Not a fugitive. Not a lover of humans." Jace emerged beside Liari, scarred and steady. "She's more than your crown. She's free." The Empress looked at him with disgust. "This is your influence. You poisoned her mind. You broke the chain of our blood." Liari took a step forward. "No, he reminded me I had a choice, and I made it." The Empress raised her hand. The 2 guards stepped forward, weapons drawn. Jace tightened his grip on the spear. Liari whispered, "Don't let them take me, no matter what." The first guard lunged. Jace rolled to the side and struck with the spear, cutting across armor plates. Sparks flew. The second turned toward Liari, aiming a plasma dart. She spun and knocked the weapon aside with a sharp cry. Dust and leaves exploded into the air. The Empress stood still, watching, measuring, testing how far her daughter had truly fallen. Liari charged at her. Blades met in the center of the clearing. Steel clanged against steel. Sparks lit the air. Jace fought to keep the guards at bay. He was bleeding again, a wound on his side reopening, but his feet stayed planted. His hands did not shake. He knew what was at stake. And it was not just freedom. Liari broke through her mother's defense, knocking the blade from her hand. The Empress stumbled back. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with realization. Her daughter had changed. And there was no turning back. "Strike," the Empress whispered. "Take your path." Liari raised her blade, then lowered it. "I will not be you. I won't rule by fear. I won't destroy love to wear a crown." The Empress said nothing. She nodded once, turned, and walked away. Her guards followed without a word. Their ship lifted silently into the sky, disappearing into the clouds above. Jace collapsed to one knee. Liari rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his chest. He was shaking, but alive. She held him tightly, forehead resting against his. "You didn't run," he whispered. "I never will," she replied. The next morning, the forest smelled of wet soil and burned metal. Jace woke with a sharp ache in his ribs. His side had reopened from the fight, and Liari was already at his side, carefully wrapping his wound again. Her touch was firm, practiced and gentle. "You were supposed to stay hidden," she whispered, not with anger, but worry. "You said not to let them take you," he replied, forcing a tired smile. She tied the bandage tight and leaned back. Her face looked older, not from years, but from the weight of defiance. She had chosen him over her people. And now, even her own mother had accepted that decision. The temple felt different now. Not like a place of hiding, but something more permanent. Jace could feel it too. The way Liari walked slower, less cautious. The way she looked at him longer, not in fear, but in peace. Like the battle had carved space for something new between them. That evening, Liari found an old chamber beneath the temple. It was hidden behind a cracked wall covered in vines. Inside was a room filled with artifacts, maps, weapons, ancient scrolls. And in the center, a chair made of crystal and stone, glowing faintly. This was a sanctuary of the ancients, she said, a place where leaders came to find truth. Before the empire turned cold, Jace looked around, fingers brushing over old markings on the wall. "Do you think they'd approve of you being here now?" Liari stepped forward and sat on the chair. The glow pulsed once, then grew. Light surrounded her, scanning her body. Then the walls shifted, revealing a circular platform behind her. A control panel rose from the ground. "This isn't just a sanctuary," she whispered. "It's a beacon." Jace stepped back. "A beacon to what?" "To awaken something," she said. "Or someone. Something buried. Something hidden by our ancestors when the bloodline became corrupted." Before he could stop her, she pressed her hand to the control panel. The crystal throne pulsed again, brighter now. Symbols lit across the chamber walls. Outside, the ground shook slightly. Birds scattered into the sky. Jace raised his spear. "What did you just do?" She turned toward him, her face calm but focused. "I think I just called the last true defenders of our kind." That night, they waited. The sky remained still. No ships. No more drones. Only the hum beneath the earth. As if something ancient was slowly waking up. Liari stood at the temple entrance, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the stars. Jace joined her. His steps were slower now, but steady. "Do you believe they'll come? These defenders?" "I don't know," she answered. "But if there's a force left in the galaxy that believes in peace, in love stronger than duty, they'll hear me." For 3 days they waited. Life returned to a rhythm. Jace taught Liari to play an earth instrument he had pulled from the wreckage. She had no talent for melody, but her laughter filled the air when the notes went wrong. Then, on the 4th day, something came through the clouds. A ship. Silent. Black as space. Smooth. With no visible weapons. It hovered above the clearing, then landed without sound. The trees did not sway. The birds did not flee. It was as if nature itself welcomed the arrival. The ship opened. From within stepped 5 beings. They were tall, draped in robes made of starlight and silver thread. Their eyes glowed with a calm intensity. One of them approached and bowed slightly. "To Liari, daughter of the broken line," he said. "We felt your call. The beacon has not been touched in 10,000 years. I called not for war," Liari said, "but to ask can love be stronger than a throne?" The robed figure nodded slowly. "The throne is cold, but the heart is warm. If you live by the heart, Then you carry the truth the old empire forgot. Jace stood beside her, unsure of what to say. The figure turned toward him, studying his face. Then he spoke again. You risked your life for her, and she gave up a galaxy for you. That is a power even empires should fear. They were offered protection, a place beyond stars, a world untouched by greed or crown. But the decision was theirs. The choice, once again, belonged to them. Jace looked at Liari. Do we run again? She shook her head. No, we build something. Not for the empire, not for royalty, but for us. Asterisk, the world they chose was quiet. It was not made of gold or iron, but of green hills, slow rivers, and skies untouched by war. The robed visitors called it the cradle, a place for rebirth. A place where former warriors, thinkers, and dreamers could begin again. Jace and Liari settled in a valley, surrounded by mountains. There was no palace, no throne, only a simple home built by their hands. The days began with morning mist and ended with stars too many to count. In this silence, they found what neither empire nor duty ever gave them: peace. Jace's body healed slowly, but his soul healed faster. He would often sit outside, carving wood with a borrowed blade. Not for defense this time, but for art. Liari began to learn his craft. Her first sculpture was rough, but she smiled at it as if it were perfect. They planted a garden behind their new home. It was Liari's idea. She wanted to see something grow, something alive that they could touch and taste. Each seed they placed in the ground felt like a vow to the future, a promise that what they built would last. One morning, while watering the roots, Liari paused and looked up at the sun. This is not what I thought my life would become, she said. Jace wiped sweat from his brow. Better or worse? She laughed softly. Better, because it's mine now. No one chose it for me, but peace does not erase the past. It only softens it. One evening, a messenger arrived. A woman cloaked in silver, wearing no weapons, only a small crest on her chest, the seal of the reformed Arvan assembly. I bring no command, she said. Only a request. Jace stood beside Liari as the woman spoke. The empire has fractured. Your family has lost much. There are many who now wish to rebuild, not through war, but through truth. They want you to return not to rule, but to teach. Liari's hands clenched. They once hunted me, called me traitor. Now they ask me to return? The messenger nodded. Because you proved something they never could. That strength is not in bloodlines, but in love. That power is not in thrones, but in sacrifice. Jace said nothing. His eyes stayed on Liari. He saw the war inside her return for a moment, the battle between anger and purpose. Then slowly she spoke. I will speak. But only if Jace speaks with me. The messenger bowed. As you wish. They traveled for 3 days aboard a quiet vessel. The stars were familiar, yet felt further away. Liari stayed silent most of the time. Jace did not ask her what she planned to say. He already knew. The assembly hall was half in ruins, stone pillars cracked, windows shattered. But the people inside were different now. No crowns, no robes. Only worn faces and hopeful eyes. Survivors. Like them. When Liari entered, the room fell silent. Jace followed close behind. She stood before them not as a princess, not as a rebel, but as someone who had lived truth beyond politics and pain. I once believed my place was beside a throne, she said. But I found more truth in the arms of a Terran than I ever found. In my ancestors' halls, she told them about the temple, about the beacon, about the battle she fought not with armies, but with choice. She told them of the wound Jace took for her, and the crown she gave up to save him. And how, through each sacrifice, something greater was born. Not silence, not death, but hope. Jace was asked to speak next. He wasn't used to crowds. His voice was rough, simple. but every word hit deeper than any speech filled with titles. "I didn't know she was a princess when I ran to her," he said. "I just saw someone about to die, and I couldn't let it happen." He looked around the room, then back at Liari. "She saved me too, not just from death, but from being forgotten. From being small in a universe filled with giants. She saw me, and I saw her." The hall remained silent, not out of judgment, but respect. For the first time, both human and alien sat in the same chamber and listened not to war, but to a love that neither language nor law could deny. Afterward, they were offered places among the new council. Liari declined. So did Jace. They had come to speak, not to stay. Their home was still back in the valley, where the river hummed and the stars watched quietly. They returned that night, together, no longer fugitives, no longer rulers. Just two souls who had walked through fire and came out holding each other's hand. Seasons passed quietly in the valley. The garden behind the stone house grew taller. Vines climbed the walls. Flowers bloomed in colors not found on Earth. Jace and Liari found rhythm in the silence. There were no more alarms, no more orders, no more missions. Each morning, they woke with the sun. Jace cooked over a small fire while Liari watered the garden. They didn't speak much during these early hours. They didn't need to. The peace between them said more than words ever could. In the afternoons, Jace repaired old tech pulled from the escape pod. It was no longer about survival. It was curiosity now, learning. He built a small windmill that powered lights inside the home. Liari painted the walls with symbols from her childhood. Not royal ones, but stories of stars and forests. One evening, Liari stood at the edge of the hill, looking up at the sky. The stars shimmered, reflecting in her eyes. Jace came to her side and placed a hand on her back. She leaned into him, quiet for a moment. "I used to think my destiny was written in those stars," she said. "And now?" he asked. "Now I believe it's written here," she said, placing her hand gently over his chest. Jace smiled. "I never believed in fate, but I believe in you." The next morning brought a strange sound. A low hum, familiar and unfamiliar. Jace stepped outside and saw a craft landing at the far end of the valley. It was small, non-military, white with blue markings. Peace colors. Liari followed him, her face calm but alert. They waited as the ship opened. A single figure stepped out, not a soldier, not a noble, a child, no older than 10. Human in appearance but with soft violet eyes. She held a small device and a folded letter. She approached slowly, not afraid. "Are you Jace and Liari?" Jace nodded. "We are. Who sent you?" The girl handed him the letter. "From the United Terran Archive, they found your records. Your story reached the outer colonies. Some want to learn from it." Liari took the letter and read silently. The words were simple. A request for guidance. A wish to build peace projects inspired by what she and Jace had done. They called it the Valley Accord. "I didn't think our story would go beyond the stars," Liari said. "Truth travels," Jace answered. "Even when we don't." They invited the girl inside. She stayed for 2 days, asking questions, how they survived, why they chose each other, what they gave up. Liari taught her how to grow plants in alien soil. Jace showed her how to make fire from wet bark. When the girl left, she carried seeds, stories, and a new mission. She promised to return with others, not warriors, not rulers, just people who wanted to learn and live. Over the weeks that followed, more visitors came, some human, some alien, some with scars of war, some with hope in their hands. They didn't stay forever. But while they were there, the valley became more than a home. It became a symbol. A place where 2 lives touched and changed the galaxy in ways neither of them planned. A human who acted from instinct. An alien who chose heart over heritage. Together, They created something no empire ever could. One evening, Jace sat by the fire, watching Liari as she hummed a soft tune. He felt the warmth of the flames, the scent of wood smoke, and the calm of knowing he had no more enemies to fight. She looked over at him. "Do you regret anything?" He shook his head. "Only that I didn't find you sooner." She smiled, walking over and sitting beside him. "Then let's not waste a single day." The stars above moved slowly. Galaxies turned without notice. Civilizations rose and fell. But in that quiet valley, under the old temple stones and sky-wide silence, two souls held onto each other and never let go. The valley changed with time, but its soul remained untouched. New faces came and went. Small homes were built beside the river. Children ran between the tall trees, their laughter blending with the wind. The place that once held only two now held many. Jace built a school using old temple stones. It had no bells, no ranks, no punishments. Just open space, shared stories, and hands raised with curiosity. He taught the children how to read both. Terran and Arvin. He taught them how to speak with courage and listen with care. Liari worked in the garden with others. She taught how to plant with balance, how to use the land without wounding it. She showed how to sing to the roots, how to speak softly to the wind, and how peace was something one grew, not something one demanded. Their story became legend across the stars. Not because it was grand, but because it was real. A soldier and a princess. A wound and a choice. A spark in the dark that became a fire others followed. One morning, Jace awoke with a heaviness in his chest. It wasn't pain, just a quiet weight. He walked out into the garden and looked at the sunrise. The light washed over him in gold and blue. Liari joined him a moment later, her fingers brushing his arm. "You're quiet today," she said. "Just remembering," he answered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny chip. It was cracked at the edge, blackened from fire. It was part of the medical pod, the one that kept him alive all those years ago. He carried it as a reminder. Not of the pain, but of the choice she made. "You should let it go," Liari whispered. "No," he replied. "It reminds me where we began, what it cost, and why I'll never waste what you gave me." That evening, a ship arrived from the outer colonies. Not a council ship, not a military vessel, a cultural crew. They came with cameras, notebooks, and wide eyes. They asked to record everything, to preserve the valley, the history, the truth. Jace and Liari agreed, but with one condition. Nothing would be scripted, no lines, no actors. Just real people doing real things. If the story meant anything, it would speak for itself. For 3 days they were followed. Jace was filmed teaching a girl how to make fire. Liari was captured showing a boy how to plant seeds in silence. The crew filmed the children dancing, the elders singing, and the meals shared without judgment. At the end, one of the visitors asked Liari a final question. "You gave up an empire. Do you miss it?" She smiled softly. "No, I gave up an illusion. I found something real." Then they asked Jace, "And you, would you change anything?" He looked at the garden, the home, the path leading to the temple. Only if it meant finding her sooner. The visitors left in tears. Not of sadness, but of something they couldn't name. They promised to send back the recordings. To spread the story, not for fame, but for hope. Years passed. The couple aged. The river stayed the same. The trees grew taller. The children they raised became teachers of their own. Peace did not cover the galaxy, but where the valley stood, peace had roots that held strong. One quiet evening, Jace sat under the tree where he first kissed Liari. His hair had turned gray. His hands moved slower, but his eyes still held fire. Liari sat beside him, head resting on his shoulder. "If this is the last sunset," he said, "I'm not afraid." She looked up at him. "It's not the last, just another." "And if it is?" Then I'll still be here in the next one. He closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of earth and blossom. He felt her hand grip his. Firm, warm, real, as it always had been when morning came. Only one of them opened their eyes. Liari stood at the garden's edge, facing the rising sun. Her expression was calm. Behind her, the others gathered in silence. The valley knew, the trees knew. And so did she. Jace had left the world not in war, not in pain, but in peace. They buried him beside the river, beneath a stone carved with two symbols, one Terran, one Arven, no title. No crown, just his name and hers. Together, Liari tended the garden alone now, but never lonely. Every root she touched still carried his voice. Every wind that passed still whispered his laugh. And every star above, now and always, was a reminder that love had changed a galaxy and never once asked for permission.